this video, I'm going to talk about the top 10 retired baseball players that I think are next in line to be voted into the Hall of Fame by the writer's ballot. Stick with me and I'll show you who's on the list. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on my channel, Brutus on Baseball. In today's video, I'm going to run through my top 10 players that I think are the next in line to be voted into the Hall of Fame by the writer's ballot. These are the guys that are already retired, either already eligible and on the ballot or soon to be on the ballot. I'm not putting them in order of who I think is the most deserving, but who I actually think will be the next in line to be voted in. For each one, I'm going to run through when they're eligible, my prediction of what year I think they'll actually get in, and then I'll just give a little taste of why they should be getting in. I'm going to talk about their WAA and their WAR numbers, as well as their career accolades. Without further delay, let's get to work. First player up on my list is Scott Rolen. Rolen is already eligible. He's been eligible for several years, and his vote totals have been trending upward over time. I think that this coming year, the 2023 Hall of Fame vote, will be the year that he gets in. He's already crept over 60% last year. All he needs to do is jump to 75%, and there's not a whole lot of newcomers on the list to take away votes from him. So I think this will be his year. How certain am I that he'll get in this year? I'm going to put 99%, but that would move up to 100% that he will get in eventually. Why does he deserve to get in? His WAA is 44. His overall career WAR is 70. He was consistently very, very good for a long time, even if he wasn't the best player in the league in any given year. His career accolades, 7 All-Star games, 8 Gold Gloves. His defense was exceptional. A Silver Slugger Award, Rookie of the Year in 1997, 1 top 5 MVP finish, and 1 World Series championship with the St. Louis Cardinals. Second player on my list, Adrian Beltre. He's first eligible in the 2024 Hall of Fame vote, and I think that he'll get in easily on his first ballot. I have number 2 on this list, not because Rolen was a better player. You can tell by the WAA and WAR numbers that Beltre actually had a superior career to Rolen, but I just think Rolen will get in 2023. Beltre has to wait until he's eligible in 2024. Beltre had 3,000 hits, 4-time All-Star, which is really surprisingly low for how good of a career he had. A 2-time top 5 MVP finisher, 5 Gold Gloves. He was, again, a very exceptional fielder, just like Rolen. 2 Platinum Gloves. Once that started to be awarded, he got 2 of them. And 4 Silver Slugger Awards. So the next 2 guys that I think will get into the Hall of Fame are high offense and high defense third basemen. It'll be great for the Hall of Fame. Third player on my list is Ichiro Suzuki. He's first eligible in the 2025 Hall of Fame vote, and I think he'll get in on the first ballot as well. He was not only an enormously talented baseball player, but his career accolades also span from Japan to the United States, and I think voters will take that into account for sure. His WAA in the major leagues was 24.5 and his WAR was 60. Borderline numbers for the Hall of Fame. But once again, if you don't discount his numbers in Japan, those WAA and WAR numbers go way up. He was a 10-time All-Star in the United States, Rookie of the Year in 2001. He had 1 MVP in that same year in 2001, 10 Gold Gloves, 3 Silver Sluggers, and he had 3,089 hits in the major leagues only. If you count his years in Japan, that number balloons up to 4,367 hits, which is first place all time. Number 4 on my list is Todd Helton, first baseman for the Colorado Rockies. Helton is already eligible and has been eligible for several years on the writer's ballot. He hasn't been voted in yet, but his overall percentages keep on creeping up over time as well. My prediction is that he'll get in the 2025 Hall of Fame vote. And I'm 95% certain that he's actually going to be voted in. Maybe not in the 2025 year, it could be 2024, it might have to wait until 2026, but I'm 95% certain that he will be a Hall of Famer one day through the writer's ballot. His career WAA and WAR numbers are 33 and 62. 33 shows that he was a well above average player. The 62 shows that he didn't accumulate as much career WAR, and that's because of those back injuries that he suffered later in his career. After the age of about 32, 33, he just wasn't the same player as he was before. His career accolades, 5-time All-Star, 1-time top 5 MVP finisher, 3 Gold Gloves, 4 Silver Sluggers, and the incredible slash line that we all love to see. Above 300 batting average, 400 on base percentage, and 500 slugging percentage. Not very often that we see players with career numbers like that. And for anyone that wants to argue that his career was the result of the Coors Field effect playing in Colorado, I challenge you to look at his road numbers. Only his road numbers compared to a number of exceptional players already in the Hall of Fame. His numbers stack up no matter how you cut it. Number 5 on my list is CC Sabathia. CC Sabathia was going to be a borderline guy until the last couple years of his career when he turned it up a notch again and padded up his numbers. I think he'll get in pretty easily at this point. He's first eligible in 2025. I think he'll probably miss the first year, but he will likely get in 2026. For that reason, I put him number 5, but I think it's a 95% certainty that he'll get in. His WAA and WAR numbers are 28 and 62. 28's a little bit on the low side, but the 62 should be able to bump him over the edge, especially when you look at his accolades in conjunction with his WAR number. He has 251 career wins. He also has 3,000 strikeouts, 6-time All-Star. He was a Cy Young winner and finished in the top 5 4 times. That's a pretty good career peak as well. And he was a 1-time World Series champion with the Yankees. Number 6 on the list is Joe Mauer of the Minnesota Twins. He's first eligible in 2024, but I'm looking at the narrative around him, and unlike somebody else that'll come up later on in this list, he just doesn't seem to have the feel of a Hall of Famer. Maybe that's because he doesn't have the World Series championships, I'm not sure, but he's got an exceptional career. I think he'll get in, but probably not until the 2026 Hall of Fame vote. I'm about 85% certain that the writers will vote him in. His career WAA and WAR numbers are on the low side, 27.5 and 55. But that's because of the injuries, concussions that caused him to have to move away from catcher into first base for the last number of seasons of his career, whereas overall offensive production just wasn't really that great for a first baseman. But as a catcher, he was exceptional. His career was also cut a little bit short due to those injuries. But if you ask me, being a catcher is a tough position, and we need to cut a little bit of slack when we look at overall career numbers. His accolades as a catcher: a 6-time All-Star, 3-time batting title winner as a catcher, which is unmatched in Major League Baseball. He was a 1-time MVP, also finished in the top 5 for the MVP another time. He was a 3-time Gold Glove winner and a 5-time Silver Slugger winner. To me, Joe Mauer is definitely a Hall of Famer. Number 7 on the list is the guy I was just referring to when comparing to Joe Mauer, Buster Posey of the San Francisco Giants. Posey is first eligible in the 2027 Hall of Fame vote, and I think he'll actually get in on that first ballot in 2027. I'm about 95% certain of that. He will definitely be voted in by the writers, but he may have to wait a year. But if you look at his overall WAA and WAR numbers for his career, they're strikingly similar, if not a little bit lower than Joe Mauer's. He has a 27 WAA and a 45 WAR, way low compared to most Hall of Fame standards. But when you take into account that he retired really early and still at the tail end of the prime of his career, we have to cut him a little bit of slack. And this is where I think that his story and Mauer's story line up quite well. Mauer played a couple more seasons as a first baseman. Posey just decided to hang him up and spend more time with his family. But he probably could have accumulated more WAR over time. And what I think separates him from most people are his career accolades. He was a 7-time All-Star, which is very similar to Mauer. He was a Rookie of the Year in 2010, and he won an MVP award at the catcher position, just like Mauer. He also had a Gold Glove and 5 Silver Slugger awards. But what makes the biggest difference, he was a 3-time World Series champion for the San Francisco Giants. And for some reason, that makes a world of difference to voters. In my mind, Mauer and Posey are both locks for the Hall of Fame. There's not a whole lot that separates them from their careers. They'll probably go in pretty close together. Number 8 on my list is Andruw Jones. Andruw Jones was a defensive wizard who could also put up pretty good offensive numbers as well. He's already been eligible for the Hall of Fame for several years, and I think it's still going to take him some time to get over 75% and be voted in by the writers. But I think it will happen toward the end of his eligibility. Probably around the year 2027 is my guess. I'm about 75% certain that he'll be voted in by the writers. A little bit lower than most of these guys, so we're starting to get into the territory of a really educated guess, but not certainty. His career WAA and WAR are 36 and 63. Pretty good numbers, but a lot of people would tend to forget that because all of that really happened in the first 10 to 12 years of his career. After the age of 30, he dropped off immensely, and so did his defense, which is what really props up a lot of those WAR numbers for him. His accolades: he was a 5-time All-Star, 1-time top 5 MVP finisher, 10 Gold Gloves. And for those of you that are not old enough to have seen him play, man, he was an exceptional center fielder that really separated himself from others. Do I think Andruw Jones is a surefire Hall of Famer? I'm not so sure. Based on his percentages that he's been gathering over the years, I think he'll creep up to 75% eventually. But to me, if he didn't make it, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I have a harder time voting for somebody that has a really great 10-year period, but then falls off after the age of 30. I like to have some longevity mixed in with a high peak as well. The number 9 player on my list, Carlos Beltran. Beltran is first eligible in 2023, the upcoming Hall of Fame ballot. I don't think he's going to make it. He was going to be a questionable first ballot guy anyway, because his overall career numbers are quite good, but he just doesn't have that narrative, and he didn't stick with one team for very long, making it really difficult for a single fan base to give him a lot of support for the voting. I think he would have made it, and I think he would have made it in his second or third year maybe, if it wasn't for the recent Houston Astros scandal as well. That probably dropped him down a few notches. I think he'll still get in. I put somewhere around the 2028 Hall of Fame voting season, but my certainty on that is about 50-50. Who knows? We'll have to see how he does his first year out and how big of a hill he has to climb before reaching 75%. His career WAA and WAR numbers show that he's a Hall of Fame candidate for sure. In his career accolades, 9-time All-Star, 1999 Rookie of the Year, 1 top 5 MVP finish, 3 Gold Gloves, 2 Silver Slugger awards, 1 World Championship, and then add on the 312 stolen bases to everything else that he does so well. The number 10 and last guy on my list for this video is Billy Wagner. Now, Wagner is an interesting case. He's a relief pitcher. Relief pitchers don't build up a lot of huge numbers for the Hall of Fame. But we've seen in recent years that the baseball writers are showing a lot less reluctance in voting for relief pitchers. Whether it's guys like Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman that probably deserve to get in, or guys that were voted in like Bruce Sutter and Lee Smith. If those guys are in, maybe we should be looking at the relief pitcher a little bit harder. And in walks Billy Wagner. Now, Wagner's career totals are pretty low for the Hall of Fame because he didn't even pitch 1,000 innings in his career. But his vote totals from the baseball writers have been creeping up every year of his eligibility until he got over 50% this last year. He doesn't have very many years left on the ballot, but I think he's going to squeeze in, probably in his last year in 2025. I give it about a 40% chance. I think he's got a pretty good opportunity, but I think it's actually more likely that he'll probably miss, just because there's a lot of writers that refuse to vote for relief pitchers. His career WAA and WAR numbers are really low, 16.5 and 27, but when you compare him to relief pitchers in the Hall of Fame, especially a guy like Trevor Hoffman, they actually stand up really well, showing he was a lot more valuable over way less innings. What are his accolades? Why should he be in the Hall of Fame? I'm actually a supporter of Billy Wagner. I don't typically support a lot of relief pitchers for the Hall of Fame, but I do think the game has been changing. And if we're seeing guys get in like Sutter and Lee Smith and Trevor Hoffman, then you've got to make room for Billy Wagner as well. And here's why. He was a 7-time All-Star as a relief pitcher. He won the 1999 NL Rolaids Relief Award, which at that time was given to the best relief pitcher in the league that year. He placed in the top 5 in the Cy Young Award voting one time. But here's the thing. This is what separates him from me and what really makes his career amazing. He was the hardest thrower of his generation, by far. For an example, in 2002, he had 159 pitches that were clocked over 100 miles per hour. The next highest pitcher was Bartolo Colon with 12 pitches in that same year. So he had 147 more pitches over 100 miles an hour than the next guy in line. And because of that, he has the highest strikeout to inning ratio in the history of the game of baseball at 11.9 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. That is phenomenal. And I don't think that that's something that can go ignored by the voters. He had a 187 ERA plus for his career, which shows that he was an exceptional pitcher when he did pitch. And something that I do like to give a little bit of credit for, just like Buster Posey, he decided to retire at the top of his game. In 2010 for the Atlanta Braves, he had 37 saves with a 1.43 ERA and a 275 ERA plus. If he had put a couple more years in at that level, or even slightly less, we would not be having this conversation. So that is my entire list. With all these guys, who knows what's actually going to happen? We're going to have to see how things play out. I'm going to reserve the right to adjust these numbers and predictions every year. So we'll revisit again next year, and we'll see how things have changed. I hope you look forward to the Hall of Fame voting this coming winter. I'm going to be tracking it just like everybody else does. And I'm hoping that Scott Rolen does get in January 2023. For now, like the video, check out my other videos, subscribe to my channel, enjoy the game of baseball, and keep on talking about it. Until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.